You have reached the Geek Elite. Good luck.
I know what you're thinking. Did he fire 6 shots or only 5? Well, to tell you the truth, in all this excitement, I've kind of lost track myself. But Ian, this is a .44 Magnum, the most powerful handgun in the world, and would blow your head clean off. You've got to ask yourself one question. Do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk?
Okay, on today's episode of The Mitch and Rich Show, we are continuing our watch of Oscar-nominated Best Picture films, and we are going into The Sound of Metal. Richard?
The Sound of Metal! Yeah!
I mean, yeah, that's exactly how that went.
Yeah, that was probably the most metal thing I've done today.
Before we get into that, we'll get into a little bit of movie news and just to see how it's all panning out. First thing I wanted to talk about was Paramount. Paramount went and moved a lot of their slate for this year. Some of it got moved further down the year, and some of it got moved to the following year and stuff like that. So you got Snake Eyes moving to July 23rd, 2021. This is the Snake Eyes origin movie for G.I. Joe.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
It was like not a continuation of the Nicolas Cage movie from...
Not a remake of the Nicolas Cage movie from the early
90s?
Yeah, the mid-90s, late 90s.
Mid-late 90s? Yeah, somewhere there.
Apparently there's a new Jackass movie. That's going to be moved to October 22nd, 2021.
Really?
Yeah. Did not know that either.
I didn't. Yeah, that's particularly strange, I guess.
Top Gun Maverick, which is moving to November 19th, 2021.
Okay. So it was originally May, right?
I mean, originally it was last year.
Well, okay, yeah. Yeah, so not originally, but after the first push, it was pushed back to May of this year, wasn't it?
I think so.
Or at least summer.
Or July.
Yeah,
because I think it was supposed to be
summer.
a July movie the first time around, too.
Okay. So yeah, definitely in that summer blockbuster.
I'm sure that with Black Widow now moving itself to Disney moving Black Widow to July 9th, they were like, maybe we don't want to go up against that.
Yeah.
So they moved to November 19th, 2021, which I believe is when Shang-Chi is coming out. So I don't know if they want to go up against that either. Then Mission Impossible 7 is moving to May 27th, 2022. And Dungeons and Dragons, obviously a movie adaptation of the popular board game, is moving to March 3rd, 2023. And Mission Impossible 8 is moving to July 7th, 2023.
That's so crazy. Like, it's just insane to hear Mission Impossible 7 and Mission Impossible 8 in that same thing.
Right.
Like, that's pretty wild, but I'm not shocked, but it's pretty wild.
2000, when Mission Impossible 1 comes out, did you think that we were going to... Was it 2000? Was it before that?
I think it was 99.
I feel like I was already in college, so I don't. But I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I mean, did you think we'd be getting to Mission Impossible 8?
No. I mean, I guess, to be fair, though, at that same time period, like, sequels just weren't anywhere near, like, the popularity that they are now. I mean, like, I don't know. If they were to announce anything and it does good now, I'm like, well, we're getting 10 of them. Like, but no, like, I would have never assumed we were going to be pushing the boundaries of 10 Mission Impossible movies.
I mean, I always figured that after Mission Impossible 2, which I do appreciate more now, but at the time I was like, this is not what I was expecting, and I really felt like it didn't do all that well. I would not have expected them to get to Mission Impossible 8, but here we are.
Yeah, the second one definitely well, it's I guess kind of fascinating because a lot, like, Brian De Palma did the first one, and a lot of people complained that it was too
heady.
Yeah, like it was, you had to think too much about it, or it was too confusing, or something to that effect. And so then they're like, okay, well, what can we do? I know, let's get the infamous, awesome action director John Woo to come in and turn it into an action franchise. And then they went that route, and it feels like that also didn't do too well because you now had this group of fans that were like vested in this really spy craft type of film, and then it comes away from it. It kind of ends up becoming more of what you would expect, like, I guess, a James Bond movie to kind of be. And as it's progressed, I think it's kind of continued to evolve and find its own footing. But I think whenever you have a franchise and you take it from one end of the spectrum to the other, you're going to alienate someone in that process, and I feel like that's what happened.
I mean, you definitely get different types of movies throughout that. I mean, when you get to the Brad Bird, Mission Impossible 3, it's more of a overproduced, stylized movie, which then sets the tone for the rest of the movies that come after that. So
very true. So the first one, I just looked it up on the IMDb's, and 1996.
Wow, I was really off. So I was not yet in college.
Yeah, you were only 4 years off. That's not that far.
Fair. Okay. So Mission Impossible 8, 2023. I mean, we just got to hope that we hold out for that long.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, I'm also just, I guess, curious to see. I feel like they've all continued. Like, I don't know. I've enjoyed all of them, and I think I've enjoyed all of them for very different reasons. But it is a franchise that I feel like has, like I said, it's kind of managed to find a way to somehow be kind of fresh every time, every outing. There's like the stunts just keep getting crazier, but not in an unbelievable way. Like, you have like the Fast and the Furious, where like, yeah, they got to the point where the cars were basically flying, and like I don't feel like Mission Impossible's lost that level of grounding. Like, sure, there's some creative liberties, of course, you have to do that, but I don't recall it ever being like that far over the. I mean, like, it's had some crazy stunts, but they somehow managed to always feel realistic to me.
Well, I mean, for the most part, they are realistic. Like, as I understand it, Christopher McQuarrie and Tom Cruise sit down and be like, well, what's the crazy stunt you want to do in this one? And then they build a movie around that. Like, I want to climb the tallest building in all of the world and be hanging from it. I want to be hung from the side of a jet as it's taking off. All these things is just okay, sure.
I want to fly a helicopter through a canyon chasing Henry Cavill. All right, let's do it.
What was it? That one was also the Halo jump, right? That was the I want to do a Halo jump, and you can film it the whole way down. It's like that's insane.
So is Mission Impossible like the one that he's shooting part of in space? I'm doing air quotes for those of you that can't hear the whiffing wind through my fingers as I say that, but
I don't think it was.
It's a different Tom
I think it was
Cruise
supposed to be
movie, right?
Yeah, different Tom Cruise movie, but I'm sure if they're going to be going into space, it's like, let's film a couple things here. We'll just use it for other movies.
I mean, you get Tom Cruise into space, you might as well. Like, you might as well make like 5 movies, because that guy just, from what I hear, never stops working either. Like, he, I guess, would work 7 days a week, like as many hours as he possibly could. So, yeah, well, and not only that, I mean, you might as well start filming scenes for Mission Impossible 10, because we all know when you get to the 10 sequel, you got to go to space anyway. So now they're going to have actually in space on a movie screen. That's crazy. Like, it sounds like Tom Cruise, though. Like, that's like the most Tom Cruise thing I could think of, is like, I've got to outdo the stunts of every actor in Hollywood. Let's go to space. But real space. Not like fake stage space.
Not that fake space that we saw in those Star Wars movies.
Yeah. None of that. None of those Jar Jar Binks.
So speaking of Star Wars,
did
you ever watch the TV series Fleabag?
Yes.
It's on Amazon Prime.
It's Amazon Prime. I think there's 2 or 3 seasons at this point.
I think it's just 2 seasons.
Yeah, and it's like, I don't remember her name, but she's a comedian in real life, or like, right?
She's a comedic writer.
Comedic writer. Okay.
She's Phoebe Waller-Bridge, and this is how it connects back to Star Wars. Oh. She was the voice of Ellie in Solo.
Oh.
The AI, the robot that hung out with Lando and No Calrissian. So she is going to be in the next Indiana Jones movie, Indiana Jones 5. So she in Solo, she didn't actually work with Harrison Ford. Now she will get to work with Harrison Ford in Indiana Jones 5, which I honestly don't know what she's going to be playing. I hope it's not like a love interest, because that's just too creepy, because he's so old. But I don't know. How do you feel about her and her being in Indiana Jones? How do you feel about an Indiana Jones 5? Honestly,
I don't know. I personally, and I guess it's, to be fair, I've only watched the Crystal Skull, I think, once, and I was like, that's enough. Which, I don't know. I mean, maybe I should go back and give it a second chance, or try to be, more subjective in watching it. But I like the first three. You know what I mean? Like I do. The other one just felt like, hey, we need to make this to keep the rights or something. Like, it didn't feel like there was that much effort really put into it. So, you know, again, this is where the industry is at. Like, they're definitely targeting sequels or existing intellectual properties. And, you know, I do like Indiana Jones. I think that if they, you know, I think if they kind of go back to just creating a good movie, it really felt like the Crystal Skull was more of like, okay, well, we have to do this one quick because we're really trying to set up a new spin-off thing with like Shia LaBeouf. And so I don't know, it just didn't feel like it was like this standalone Indiana Jones film. It felt like, we're going to give you a slice of Indiana Jones, but we really want you to pay attention to this other thing because this is where we want to take it. This is going to be the future of the franchise. And then that whole thing just kind of fell apart for probably tons of different reasons, I would imagine. So, you know, I think if they come back to it and they're like, let's get back to kind of the roots and the ideas that made those first three movies so good, I think, I mean, I would watch it. Like, I have a hard time saying I wouldn't watch anything anymore because, like, Cobra Kai, I was like, this is the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. And then I watched it and I kept watching it and kept watching it. And I was like, okay, I would have never thought I wanted that, but now that it's here, I genuinely enjoyed it. And so I don't know, it's weird. Like, you know, I think you have that mindset of, you're like, well, can we really let Indiana Jones rest? But, you know, obviously not. Like, and maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it's not. It just depends on how they end. I don't know. What do you?
I mean, I am not one of the people that completely hated Crystal Skull.
Okay.
I really enjoy like not Raiders.
Temple of Doom?
No, I mean, I like Temple of Doom. I like all of them. I honestly do. I honestly like all of them. The Last Crusade. The Last Crusade is probably my favorite. But like, I feel like a lot of people have the nostalgia glasses on when they think about the first three movies. There is a lot of outrageous stuff in those too, and we get aliens and the whole, you know, living through the nuclear explosion by getting in the refrigerator is dumb and stuff like that. But like, swinging with the monkeys that Shia LaBeouf dub that's not that outrageous compared to some of the other stuff that we see in the other movies. Temple of Doom has a dude reaching into another guy's chest and pulling his heart out. Like, yeah, it's kind of out there.
Boom Shiba, like rips it out.
So I will be there to watch this movie because honestly, I want more movies like Indiana Jones. I want that sense of adventure movie. I want that like I like the National Treasure movies because it's kind of the same thing. I want more Lara Croft movies because it's the same thing. Like, just going on an adventure to find a thing is cool to me. I like that stuff. So,
well, the good thing is you're probably going to get Nathan Drake. You're going to get some Tom Holland, Nathan
that's
Drake.
True. We are
movies.
We are getting that. So, I mean, that might fill that hole in my heart that I'm missing. When a while ago when they were talking about Chris Pratt coming in to play a younger version of Indiana Jones, I was all about that too. I was like, sure, why not? It's better than some of the other stuff that he's done other than Guardians of the Galaxy, like those Lost World movies or those Jurassic Park movies, or Jurassic World movies. Yeah. Sorry, like those, to me, those are horrible. I can't stand them.
I don't disagree with you on that. and again, like, I don't know, I don't know why I feel this way, but like, even just thinking of those two, it's like, you know, I look at Crystal Skull and I'm like, well, I just don't really buy Shia as, you know, the person that the torch is being handed to, right? But like, for some reason in my mind, like, if I'm seeing this, you know, on-screen thing of like Harrison Ford passing the metaphorical torch to someone, I do kind of buy Chris Pratt, and I don't know why that is, but I could totally see that a little bit more than Shia, and I don't know why.
I think it's because you really get that feel of Star-Lord being a mix between Indiana Jones and Han Solo, like, just especially that first scene that you see him in the first Guardians of the Galaxy, like, it's him going up to the thing, kind of wondering if, okay, I need to use this to get the device out of there, kind of thing. Like, I don't know.
I guess I could see. No, I guess that's a very fair point. And I guess when you kind of think of Shia's filmography, there's not really
An equivalent.
Yeah, right. I mean, like, I can't think of anything where I'm like, oh yeah, he's this great world-renowned adventurer, and it's like with Guardians of the Galaxy, you're right. Like he's maybe not like he's kind of more infamous, but like he's like, oh, I'm Star-Lord. You haven't heard of me? What do you mean? It's like he still has kind of that egocentric drive to him that like Indiana Jones has, and so I guess you're right. I guess it's easier to assimilate him to kind of a mental image because of his other roles. But I agree with you. I think that genre is one that we don't get as often as a lot of other film types, right? Like the kind of action adventure. I mean, there's a lot of action adventure, but kind of like that, historic exploration, action adventure type thing. I don't think we get a lot of, it kind of comes in waves. Like you said, it was like Indiana Jones and then like a little bit of Lara Croft, and then it kind of it wasn't anything for like a long period of time. So I agree. I'm down. Like, and I don't even care if it's like outlandish. Like the alien thing, I don't think bothered me because like that still seems very reasonable to me. Like, aliens probably really do exist, right? I mean, the universe is pretty substantial in size. Like,
to think that we're the only ones in it seems pretty conceited.
It's and it seems, I don't know, that seems more believable to me for some reason than like half of the stunts in Fast and the Furious 8 or whatever it was, So like I don't think it's that. I just think they need to like really focus on like the story, and I just feel like that kind of was missing. Or maybe it was just like, I don't know. Like I said, it's been a while since I've seen it, but maybe it just felt convoluted at the time. Maybe it didn't feel like it was like this really well packaged, put together story. So I think if they do that, I'm on board. I would love to see it.
Okay. All right. Have you ever heard of the actor Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson?
Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson.
Sounds familiar?
It rings a bell, but his name sounds so familiar to this guy who makes like really bomb tequila. And I'm not, it's weird.
Is it good tequila?
It is really good. I'm not even a tequila person. And I tried it and I was like, ooh, this could be bad. Like,
have you tried his new energy drink? Zoa?
I have not, no.
I think it's pronounced Zoa.
No.
Zoa. Zoa. The only reason I ask, so I don't know if you remember back in 2017, like The Rock announced on his social media, or not so much announced, but just said, like, yeah, I've seriously considered running for president. Then you have a couple months ago, his NBC show, Young Rock, came on, and it's all about him. Essentially, he's having interviews with Randall Park playing Randall Park.
Interesting.
And it's set a little bit further in the future from now, and it's all about him on his presidential run, like his run to being the president. And he's like, all right, so I'm going to tell you stories about myself as a kid, so that all the bad things I did as a kid can be out there, and people can't just like spring it on me. Like no one's going to be like, gotcha. Yeah. It's like I'm telling the story myself.
Just air the laundry.
So that's what that show is about. That sitcom. So he also went on to be like, if it said, I would consider a presidential run in the future if that's what the people wanted. So Newsweek went and ran, I guess, a poll or talked to people. 46% want Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson as president.
Really?
Yeah, that's what their headline said. At least 46% of Americans would support a presidential run from Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, according to a new poll. And then The Rock went on to his Instagram and posted the picture and was like, I'm humble. It's humbling. I don't think our founding fathers ever envisioned a 6'4", bald, tattooed, half black, half Samoan, tequila drinking, pickup truck driving, fanny pack wearing guy joining their club. But if it ever happens, it'd be my honor to serve you, the people. How do you feel about The Rock running for president and then, if it went well, becoming the president of the United States?
So I don't believe that poll, first off.
Okay.
That number seems low.
Oh, okay.
46%? No way. It's got to be like in the high 80s for sure. I have never in my life met a single person who's like, I don't like The Rock.
I mean, that's true, but the presidency should not be a popularity contest. We all need to know if he runs, what kind of platforms he runs on.
So here's my thoughts on that. And I know we genuinely try to shy away pretty heavily, or we typically shy away from politics on this show. We usually get very political, but I don't think The Rock could do any worse than just about any other president we've ever had.
Okay.
I really don't. I mean, Ronald Reagan was an actor and became president.
This is true.
Our last president, Donald Trump, was a reality TV star and a multiple failed business person, and he got elected president.
He did.
So, I mean, I'm just saying, like, we've had a lot of people in the presidency, and I really don't think that, I don't think he would do that bad of a job. He seems like a very reasonable guy. He has had an incredible career. I mean, he went from being broke and having no money to being, I think, the highest paid actor on the planet currently.
I don't know if he was the highest paid actor, but he was the
highest earner, the box office earner or whatever, right?
He earned the most money, yeah.
So that, and then, I mean, he
obviously has his finger in a lot of different pies.
Exactly. I mean, he just started, the tequila company a few years ago, the energy drink thing. I mean,
he's supposed to have started production on Black Adam this past week.
Okay. So yeah, like I don't know. I'm just saying, like, it's weird, right? Because I don't think there's like a specific thing that's ever going to prepare someone for being president. I think that's the type of job that you're never going to really understand the gravity of it until you're in it. And I, again, we've had people that weren't politicians be president, so I personally, like, I don't think it's a bad idea. He seems like a big-hearted, very kind, humanity first type individual, and putting someone like that in charge of our country and surrounding them by brilliant minds that can help advise him, I think there's a lot worse we could do as a country.
I mean, I'm in the same boat as you. I do think that it just gets us, and I hate invoking this movie because I don't care for it, but it gets us to Idiocracy faster, right? Like,
does it though?
President Camacho being a ex-professional wrestler, lawyer, whatever it was that he was, and he's just up there in an American flag shooting guns off and giving off professional wrestling speeches.
Well, true, but again,
I don't think The Rock will do all that.
Right.
I'm just saying, it sets a precedent that maybe we get that afterwards.
We're running low on burrito casings. No, but I think there is kind of this, obviously that's a hyper sensationalized satire, right? But I think if that was our mindset of being like, oh, well, he's an ex-wrestler, it's like, well, that's not a derogatory thing.
No.
I mean, there's plenty of people that were in entertainment industry that are incredibly intelligent. I mean, we have a lot of people that are in all types of the entertainment industry that are like graduated from like, Ivy League schools, if that's like your standard of like, oh, well, this person's educated enough, which again, I don't personally think any of those things really should nullify you for, like, I don't think you should have to go to an Ivy League school to even be considered to be president. And clearly, again, I could be wrong on this, but I think we just came off a president who, as far as I know, does not have an Ivy League education. And I think we've had a bunch of presidents that didn't have an Ivy League education or even a background in lawmaking or the legal system or a lifetime dedication of public service or whatever, right? Like, so I don't think that inherently any of those things should be just qualifying metrics, And again, I think if you are staring down two different candidates and one of them's like, oh, well, I've spent my entire year in politics, I've graduated from an Ivy League school, but I just hate humanity, and then you have The Rock, I think I'm going to take The Rock. Like, he just has an air of humanity about him and seems to care more about people and human life than this other imaginary candidate that I'm describing in this particular example, right? So, I don't know. I think that's the most American thing that you would ever hear, though. Like, if that's not the American dream, going from having no money to, becoming a professional wrestler and then moving into becoming one of the largest actors and most well-known and respected people. He's also like the most followed person on Instagram. Like, his list of accolades, like, is not ending. And, he obviously has made incredibly smart decisions across all those things, because if he wasn't, he would still be where he was, right? Like, he's continued to evolve and grow, and obviously he's made remarkable, like, he's at least showcased remarkable decision-making abilities, because he has gone from having nothing to being in so many different arenas, and if that's not impressive, I don't know what is. Like, I mean, that to me is genuinely very impressive, and that's not taking anything away from someone who at a very early age is like, oh, I want to go into public service. I mean, if your heart and mind is to go into public service, to do that, and that is your motivation to help people, that's a very noble thing. I think the unfortunate reality is there's this huge perception that most everyone in politics is in it for money and is corrupt. And I would say, that stereotype is probably not without some findings, right? It's not baseless, and it's kind of unfortunate that that's what we have come to associate that with. But I do think there's a lot of people at all levels of government, from local to, all the way up to the White House, that, do want and are trying to make things genuinely better for us as a country and the world as a whole, right? So I'm just saying, I think we could, and probably somewhere throughout all of American history, have done worse than The Rock. Just saying.
Okay. The last thing I wanted to bring up before we get to our movie.
Yeah.
Space Jam: A New Legacy. We got a trailer for the LeBron James sequel of Space Jam to the Michael Jordan Space Jam movie. First off, I just want to say I have never really been a big fan of the movie. As like, I know it hits a lot of nostalgia for a lot of people. It never hit the thing for me. Like, it never became one of my movies as a kid.
Well, and that's when did that even, I don't even remember when that.
It's got to be early 90s.
Came out, right?
94?
96.
96, really?
This Mission Impossible.
Jeez.
What?
Would not have expected that.
Well, I mean, I guess that kind of makes more sense, because we would not have been super, super young when that came out.
Yeah. I would have been 14, starting high school, so.
Yeah, so I think maybe that, because, I mean, you said that, and I totally agreed with you. I was like, yeah, I never like, was like, oh, Space Jam, this is my jam, right? Like, never had that, so I agree with you.
How do you feel about it? So this time around, we're not just sticking to Looney Tunes. They are diving into anything that Warner Brothers owns. You see in the little thing that he is writing down, he's got Superman, Iron Giant, a couple other names. King Kong.
Definitely in there.
We see King Kong. We see Iron Giant later in the trailer. It does seem like they are doing a lot more of just the tunes in the Toon Squad of basketball players. However, I don't know if you caught this. I saw it going around the internet. The bad guys from Clockwork Orange are in the movie.
What?
Yes. I know that they have a certain term for their group, and I don't remember what it is. But yeah, they are cheering on LeBron James at one point. Like, I don't exactly know what's going on with this movie. This is a family movie. Those are rapists.
I definitely did not catch that in the trailer. I don't remember. I don't know. Is it someone saying it's in the trailer?
It's in the trailer.
It is in the trailer.
It's in the trailer.
I definitely did not see that, but I would agree with you that that's a very strange call. All of it feels really strange, right? Because, I mean, I feel like I liked that movie better when it was, Ready Player One, right? Which I'm sure...
It seems a lot like Ready Player One.
Yeah. I'm sure a ton of people have made that joke.
They have.
That's definitely what it
especially with the Iron Giant showing up.
And King Kong.
And King Kong. That's right. King Kong is in Ready Player One.
Yeah.
The very beginning.
So, I don't know. I blame Marvel, right? Like
You had to have a cinematic universe.
Yeah.
Connect everything. Now we got to have one.
Right, yeah. Warner Bros. Like, oh, well, okay, we'll outdo you. We'll connect every movie we've ever made. It's like, not every movie you ever made needs to be connected to a family film that's rated G or PG. Like, that seems like a very strange choice.
And you see in the trailer, you see Lola Bunny, which at that point, they had not announced that Zendaya is going to be doing the voice of Lola Bunny. Like, I always find it like, obviously you have to draw the whole thing out before you can do anything else. So I assume they get the voice actors to come in afterwards, like kind of thing.
I mean, yeah, I would. I guess it depends. Like every production could be a little bit different, but yeah, you would think so, unless they were for some reason doing.
I guess the Simpsons do it the other way around. The Simpsons, but they've been doing it forever. They do they have the group come in, read the lines, and then leave, and then the animators animate around that.
Yeah, I mean, I think either one of them would work, but I mean, I don't know. I would agree with you. It seems like it would be more practical to like be able to show those actors. Because again, you're right. The Simpsons have been doing it for years. Those voice actors know those characters inside and out at this point. Like, but when you have something like this, I could see it being helpful for you as an actor who's lending your voice to a character to be able to see and help you understand what's going on versus just, oh, I'm going to do a performance and then we're going to animate. But I mean, again, that's just my assumption. It could go either way, I guess.
So how do you feel about this movie coming out of the trailer?
I mean, it's like you said, neither one of us had, an attachment to it when we were young. So there's not really a strong nostalgic, force there for either one of us. I still think we're not the demographic for this movie at this point. I also am not a huge basketball fan, so it's not like I'm like, oh, like I gotta go watch it for LeBron, like. So I mean, will I watch it? Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we'll probably see it at some point. Do I have really high hopes for it? No, but it's also not. It's not really targeted towards us either, and that's okay. It doesn't have to be.
It doesn't have to be.
No.
This is directed by Malcolm D. Lee. It is produced by Ryan Coogler. Malcolm D. Lee made one of my favorite movies that's go-to of just if I need something or if it's on, I'll watch it. It's Roll Bounce.
Oh, okay.
the Bow Wow movie about roller skating. I don't know. It's just one of my favorite movies. So.
Well, I mean, maybe that's a good sign,
maybe,
because I also really like a lot of Ryan Coogler's films as well. So, I mean, it'd be very curious to see how it plays out with the two of them involved. And I think it's challenging because we're not really who's targeted for this, but I think it does look like a film that I think a lot of younger people would probably enjoy.
Well, you only got a couple more months. It's July 16th, 2021, and since it's a Warner Brothers movie, it will be released day and date on HBO Max.
Interesting.
So there you go.
Well, I got no reason not to watch it.
You have no reason not to watch it. You already have HBO Max.
Yeah. I don't have to pay to go watch it in the theater or anything.
So that brings us to our movie of the night. We are talking about Sound of Metal, starring Riz Ahmed, Olivia Cook, a few other people, but those are the two main stars. Yeah. Directed by Darius Martyr. I don't know if I've heard
He's
him.
Relatively new. He did, I believe, just one other directive film before this, which was, I think, a documentary in about the early mid 2000s called Loot. Outside of that, he, I think, had most of his credited work as an editor. So yeah, I don't know if I would say this is his directorial debut, just because he did a documentary. But then again, you're like, well, that's a documentary. It's a little bit different. So I think you could make an argument that this is his narrative feature film directorial debut.
So he also he wrote this movie also, and he also wrote the screenplay for The Place Beyond the Pines, which I know you've seen, but I did not see.
Yeah.
How did you...
That actually, for some reason, makes a lot of sense.
Does it? Do you get the same sense of themes and feeling?
I would say that not so much I would maybe I would. I guess it's been a little while since I've seen The Place Beyond the Pines, so like I'd have a hard time referencing the theme of it, but definitely the characterizations and the world have very similar connective tissue, like just in terms of visuals and stuff too. Like when you think of how Riz Ahmed's visual appearances in this, with like the sleeveless shirts and the tattoos and all that sort of stuff, that's very similar to Ryan Gosling's character in Place Beyond the Pines. So yeah, I could see the parallels for sure.
So I have a lot of like not being able to relate in this movie because one, I have not lost my hearing.
Right. I
am not an addict. I have not had that struggle in my life. And I really felt like I had a hard time, not so much connecting with Riz Ahmed's character of Ruben, because he does an amazing job. He's an incredible actor. I just really had an issue with, I really felt like nobody sat this character down, sat Ruben down, and explained to him what was happening. Now, whether or not that was a choice by the director not to show it, I just really felt like there was a lot of scenes weren't there for me as a viewer. He learns, it's like almost like a light switch. Mm-hmm. He just he stops hearing. He stops having that ability. He hopes that it's going to go away. It doesn't go away. He goes to see a doctor the next day. Says the doctor's like, "You're never going to get that back. That's just not going to happen." He finally tells his girlfriend, played by Olivia Cook, he has some anger issues. He regresses back into himself. She calls his sponsor. The sponsor says, "Here, I can help you." But like, I feel like there's a whole lot of other steps that should be happening in there. Like, someone should be there to be like, "Hey, this is what's happening to you. This is what we need to do next." Like, everybody's just kind of telling him to do something instead of like asking him how he needs to, or what he wants to do. We get to this special home for addicts that are also deaf. And once again, I am not a counselor. I don't know about therapy. I don't know about how it is that you need to deal with certain people, especially this very specific situation that Ruben finds himself in. But I understand they're treating this almost like a rehab or a rehabilitation, but like he hasn't actually relapsed. Yeah. Like cutting him off from the world that he knows, making, not really, like, just learn to be deaf is the thing that he writes on there. It's like, what does that mean? Like, to me, it doesn't make any sense. Yes, this movie does a lot of the show. It doesn't do a lot of the tell, which is what I complain about most of the time, is that a lot of these movies do tell, not show. But I also feel like you need to tell me a little bit about what's going on, because the show in this happens a lot, I want to feel like off screen, if that makes any sense.
It does. And I think it's really funny in the sense that, we just kind of established that this guy is kind of a more of an editor, right? And
yes.
Then it's like
we
talked not long ago about the Snyder Cut and what can happen if you completely unleash a director without anyone telling them no.
Exactly.
This almost feels like the same thing in reverse. Like, it's like he cut too much and too quickly, like trying to keep the movie like moving forward, because again, like it has the potential to be a very, very slow, very drawn out story, and it does feel like it skips and hops forward at a very quick rate.
We got to the end of the movie, and I even asked, I was like, how much time did he spend in the facility? Like, right. I honestly don't know. It's enough for her to cut her hair, change the color, like I don't know how long that stuff could take, but she is, I don't know, either grown out of her, or out of him, or decided to do something different with her life.
I think yes, it is very challenging to nail down a specific timeline of, how long he was at this deaf community, or this, rehabilitation center that also supports the deaf community. But I think there's a lot of, and it's like you said, I would have to preface this as well. Like I don't battle addiction, and I don't know what that's like. And obviously I'm also not deaf or dealing with any sort of thing like that as well. So I think there is a lot of, things that feel very foreign to us, since we don't have any experience with those things. I think there's a couple things that I kind of interpreted from it is one, that he obviously is an addict and that they're hyper concerned about because obviously this is going to be a very big life-changing thing, right? And so especially for him, because he's a musician on top of this. And so I think it's more coming from a place of like, we as addicts understand where this path could take him very quickly, and I think it's just trying to get ahead of it as fast as possible so that it doesn't become an issue that walks him into a relapse or out of sobriety. I think the other thing that kind of feels implied is, he says it, he's talking to I can't for life remember the character's name, but the
head of the house.
Yeah, the head of the like
Joe.
Yeah, is it Joe? Okay,
yeah.
He's talking to him when they kind of first meet, and he's like, "Oh, so you're sober?" And he's like, "Yes." And he's like, "How long have you been sober?" He's like, 4 years. And he's like, "Well, how long have you and Lou been together?" And it's like 4 years. So I feel like the two of them met, they were in this like horrible, destructive life cycle. And, obviously she's alluding to the fact that she was also using drugs, that she's also sober. She's got like cutter marks on her arm where she was self-harming. And it looks like he has some burn marks on his chest where he was probably also self-harming. And there's a scene later where, spoiler alert, which you probably should know by now if you're listening to the show.
Exactly.
But there's a part toward the end of the film where they are reuniting, and he's telling her like, "You saved my life," but she's like, "You saved my life too." But then I think they're both kind of realizing in that moment that even though they love each other, and even though they kind of pulled each other out of that darkness, it does always create a gateway for the two of them to relapse back into that. And I think that's kind of, where that whole thing came from as well, right? Because, like, again, it could have been 6 months. And I mean, to me, it feels like they were probably apart for a year or more. But I mean, it could have only been 6 months. But I mean, 6 months when you're, potentially at the darkest, or coming out of the darkest, roughest rock bottom moment of your life, I would have to imagine that 6 months probably feels like a lifetime, So, I mean, it probably does open up the possibility for them to both have completely still love and care for each other, but also understand that them together is a gateway for them to potentially fall back into this lifestyle that at some point was really bad for both of them, is my guess. Like, that's kind of my interpretation of what I saw. But I do agree with you. I think there's a lot of things, and to be fair, this could be a creative choice, right? Because obviously Ruben's whole life is getting turned upside down. There's a lot of things that he's not going to have time to digest or understand and has to go with the flow. So I think there could be an argument for a creative choice there, that you kind of are trying to sweep your audience up into this whirlwind. And, this is not a joke of him becoming deaf in the movie, but I also think he was not listening, because the first doctor that he goes to is like, "Your hearing is not coming back."
Right.
And he completely refuses to accept that. So, there's a lot of times where we're sort of being taken through this character's journey through their perspective, but not their direct POV, not their visual POV, but certainly their perspective. And so I almost like, and again, some of this could also just be making excuses, but I mean, it's the subjectivity of film, right? I feel like maybe that was a creative choice to show that his character was just unwilling to accept what anyone else was telling him. And so we're just not shown that because that's not his reality, maybe. Again, that's not to say that things could not have been done in a more direct mannerism or in a clearer mannerism, because I do agree with you. I think there are times in this film where it does feel like there's gaps, or like I said, there's like leaps and jumps to these next beats and moments in the story that you're kind of like, wait, what? Like, you know what I mean? And I also think I have a little bit of an advantage over you as well because I watched it last night and then
Rewatched it with me.
We watched it again right before recording this. So I think I also have a little bit of like that because I did see it twice. So I think maybe that made things a little clearer as well.
That's fair.
Maybe.
I mean, obviously, the story is written well to the point that you have. Not that it would be anybody who suddenly wakes up one day and is no longer able to hear.
Sure.
Is going to struggle hard.
Yeah.
But this is a musician, a person who relies on their hearing for their livelihood.
Yeah. Well, and probably even stronger than even that is their identity.
Their identity. You're right. Yeah, exactly. So to have that extra struggle and more of their identity, because it's not just him, it's his girlfriend, the person that he loves. They're in this band together. To have them to go through that kind of struggle, to have to figure out who they are, even more so now, it shows the writing as well is good. I mean, what for you? If one day the one thing went away, it doesn't have to be hearing, but what's that thing? Would it be your eyes, your sight? To me, that's what I feel like it would be. It'd be my sight.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of feel like I would agree with you. I mean, like, I think, it would certainly be hard to lose any one of your senses, right? Especially after you've lived a good portion of your life with it, and then it's suddenly and they never explain it. Like, no one's able to give him an answer as to what it is.
And I really think that's the director saying, like, that's not the important part.
Sure.
That's the important part is him having to having to figure out his life, which is where I get the issue with, like, later on when Joe, very much is against the cochlear, cochlear implant. And as I understand it, that is a very hot button topic in that community, in the deaf community. I can't sit here and say that I understand, because I don't. I really don't. But I think one of the biggest troubles I have is that if I was in a car accident tomorrow and I lost my leg, if someone told me that I'm not being reasonable because I want to get a prosthetic leg, that seems wrong to me. It's not like Ruben's sitting there telling everybody that they need to get the cochlear implant. Like, this is the way that they should be doing it. He's making a decision for himself, and to me, seems very ostracized by Joe, or even looked down on, or told that he has to leave. I understand that there's other stuff there, like he broke certain rules that Joe had and stuff like that when he got to that point, but it just it doesn't seem like the right reaction to me.
Yeah, yes. And again, I think that's a really tough scene as well, because he broke the rules, but I don't really think that it was about the rules. Like, he was in a position where they, told him, like, hey, you can get this implant. But they did kind of tell him, your hearing's not going to come back, right? And so... And
we learn that even after he gets the implant, it's not
the same.
It's not the same.
No.
And I really feel like that's a discussion I'm sure someone had with him,
right,
but we never saw.
Well, and again, and I think that is... right. We definitely did not see it, and I totally agree with you. I think there is a lot of things that, if they were willing to make the pacing of this a little bit slower, I do think there's still a lot of important moments that could have been in there to help illustrate those things. Because you're right, obviously someone would have had a very lengthy conversation with him. I just think it was more of his unwillingness to accept anything other than, I'm doing this and it's going to be perfect. It's going to be back the way it was. Like, he couldn't let go of that. I think the whole thing for me in that scene that you're talking about between him and Joe is there are probably a lot of, obviously there's a lot of people at this facility that are also dealing with traumas and going through things and stuff like that. And I think it just becomes this situation of it's like, okay, well, he's someone who is a candidate for this. And again, I'm going to be honest, I don't know. I don't know medically how any of that stuff is. Like, maybe everyone is a candidate for the implants, but the way this movie makes it feel is that, like, this is not just something everyone can do. So, you know, what kind of, you know, they have this conversation about him becoming really important and, like, people looking up to him with inside of this community specifically. And they talk about him having a future there and continuing to move forward to help mentor and kind of like guide and help these other people kind of deal with the same thing. What kind of message does it send to all of them? What kind of damage does it do to everyone else that's there? If, you know, you're like, well, this is someone who's built themselves up to be this person, but now they can't let go. Like, they can't accept that. And you're a person that's not an option for, you know. To me, it felt more like that. And I did feel like it was kind of really breaking Joe's heart to tell him he couldn't stay there. Like, I felt genuinely that he did want to help him because he seemed like a pretty helpful person. He seemed stern, like very stern, but he did feel to me like he was a very helpful person. So I think it just becomes a situation where he had to put the needs of everyone else before the needs of Ruben. And, you know, I don't think it was easy for him to do that. But I felt like that was the circumstance, maybe. Again, I don't know that it showed that well or that it was that effectively communicated on the screen. But that's kind of what I got out of it.
Okay. That's fair. Let's talk technical. How did you feel about the way that this was filmed? I know at one point you were very happy with the establishing shot that was shown.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's a lot of kind of like wider shots, like epic or extreme wide, depending upon how you want to, you know, clarify it or constitute it or whatever. But there's like a lot of really wide shots in this that I think do a really good job of kind of like isolating Ruben and making him feel visually very tiny. And I would imagine that's what his character is going through. And I think it's also to kind of help establish that the world is just a massively large place, and you kind of have to let go of your ego. You kind of have to let go of those things that you can't control, right? So I think from a thematic statement, they kind of captured that with some of the shots.
Obviously, I think that I would have to look it up, but I can't imagine it isn't up for a nomination of sound mixing. Or
I would be shocked.
I would be shocked too.
Yeah,
like this, the movie does an amazing job.
Yes.
I mean, it does the thing of when he loses his hearing, we are there with him. Like we only hear what he hears.
Yep.
When he's around the deaf community and they're using sign language, we don't get to see the subtitles because he doesn't know sign language yet. When he does learn it, we finally get to know what everybody else is saying around him,
and you get the subtitles.
And you get to see, like, as the world changes sound wise for him, it changes for us. Even to the point where, you know, when he gets the cochlear implants and it sounds like someone talking through, it sounds like Poltergeist, the little girl talking through the TV.
It does, or a Zoom meeting, or like a conference call that's like cutting out on you almost, you know. So the sound design in this is great. It's very much, and it would have to be like a movie about someone losing their hearing. Yes. Yeah, no, I would agree with you. I'd be kind of shocked if it wasn't nominated for sound design. It looked to me, and again, I could be wrong on this, but it looked to me like this was shot on film. It has a very filmic look to it. There's also a lot of stuff they did with like the lighting and like which side the lighting on. So whether they were doing like short-sided or broad-sided lighting based on kind of like the tonality of the story and what was happening in it. And I thought that was, again, there's a lot of really smart cinematic choices in this, like you're talking about with like the subtitles and like all that sort of stuff and the shots and the lighting and we talked I think it was our last episode, we talked about Nomadland, right? And it's funny because I felt like that story, let me rephrase that. I feel like this movie, The Sound of Metal, was what I was expecting Nomadland to be.
Oh, okay.
Like that very kind of like filmic, cinematic narrative in a drama. And then Nomadland feels very humanistic to me and very like just raw and kind of organic. But then The Sound of Metal feels like that very, and it's weird to say polished, but for lack of a better term, it feels like this very methodical, polished Oscar type of movie. Which is not like a dig. It's not a bad thing. I just, for some reason, like the element of Nomadland haunted me and like kind of stayed with me because it felt uncomfortably human. And I feel like if The Sound of Metal had walked more of that line, combined with Riz Ahmed's performance, because like his performance is incredible, I think it would have been insanely powerful. Like, it's still a very powerful movie, but I just can't even imagine what that would have done for me, like, as an audience member, which is, I guess, kind of a weird comparison, but tonality, they're very similar. Like, the shooting styles or the thought behind them also seem to feel very similar to me as well. So, yeah, but I don't know. That's kind of just, I mean, in the technical
both
world.
movies have, excuse me, have that, journey of being in a reality and then having to eventually accept it, right? Like that's kind of what you get from both of those.
And they're both very like, well, they say gypsy in The Sound of Metal and they say nomad in Nomadland, but they both have kind of that like life in the road type of thing in the film. You know, they're both kind of like all on the run from their past, and so, you know, there's a lot of parallels between the two of them, but they're completely separate movies at the same time.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely correct. Do you think that this one has the gumption, the ability to win,
to take Best Picture?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it has the ability to. I feel a little. I don't know. I feel a little short-sighted in saying that because I haven't watched all the other Oscar nominations. I still need to see The Father and what's the other one?
Minari.
Judah and the Black Messiah.
Judas and the Black Messiah.
And Minari. I think those are maybe the only three I have left at this point.
I'm looking it up at the moment.
Because there was like 8 this year. I know there was less than. There wasn't 10 this year.
There wasn't 10.
There was like 8.
Was there 8 or 9?
There might have been 9, but I don't know. 8's the first number that jumped in my head for some reason, so I feel like that's right, but I'm not sure. Because we had Nomadland, we had Sound of Metal, Minari, Judah and the Black Messiah, The Father.
Here we go.
Mank.
Best Picture is The Father, Judas and the Black Messiah, Mank, Minari, Nomadland, Promising Young Woman, and Sound of Metal, and The Trial of the Chicago 7. So we've seen Trial of Chicago 7, Sound of Metal, Promising Young Woman, Nomadland, and Mank. So yes, we only have 3 left to do. Minari, Judas and the Black Messiah, and Father.
Yeah, so
after
we watch those,
I was going to say, well, okay, but as of now, of the 5 that you have seen, which one do you think is the most likely to win?
It's, if I was to say which one I would pick.
Okay, that's better.
I would probably say Nomadland. Again, just because like I said, when we watch it, it's hard to articulate, you know, and I think I tried to do the best that I could with it, but that just does not feel like any other movie that I've watched. It just feels very different. And to me, that's very refreshing, right? Like, because again, and that's not to say anything derogatory towards any of these other films or to take anything away from how great they are, right? Like, if anything, I think the benchmark is really quite high, which I kind of don't feel like has been the case for the last few years. I feel like within the last few years, there's been kind of more of a definitive, or at least I've had more of a definitive stance, like, oh, it's between these two. And like now I'm like, ooh, like this is tough. Like there has been a lot of really kind of powerful movies that are in there. And arguably we still have 3 to go. But when I stop and think about how I felt and what has resonated or stayed with me, yeah, it's been Nomadland, which again, I was just completely not expecting that, like at all. Like I would never, like if somebody was to just tell me that like those movies and I hadn't seen any of them, I would not have thought that that was the one that was going to kind of haunt me, for lack of a better term. That, you know what I mean? And even then, it still had things that I think could have been done differently, you know, like and that's the thing behind every film. Like every film, you know, is up against time, money, and a mountain of other circumstances, right? So it's easy to say that, but yeah, I don't know. What about you? I mean, like, what is
at this moment? Yeah. I would say, and as much as you're saying that, you know, Nomadland is a different movie than you'd seen before. Promising Young Woman, like, interesting. I think that is a different movie than I have ever seen before, and I think that's the one that I would say is I would pick for taking it.
Sure, and you know, to be fair, I would agree that it also feels very different than what you're used to seeing. Like I was totally caught off guard by it. Again, not a movie I was expecting when I watched it, and was kind of like, where is this going? So yeah, I could see that too. Again, I think it's great that there's so many strong competitors. You know, I feel like that hasn't really been the case. I feel like there's been like maybe a couple of strong competitors like every year, but I feel like this year we have a lot. Like, you know, I mean, everything that we've watched, I think we've liked. You know what I mean? I don't think there's any of them that we watched and we're like, I was like, well, you with Mank, I guess, Mank, a little bit, right?
Mank was a little bit not so great for me.
Which for me, you know, I don't know. I'm a sucker now. I mean, I always thought, I was like, Citizen Kane's the greatest movie ever made. I'm like, that's pretentious bullshit. And then I had to watch it like 50,000 times to like write papers on and stuff for film school. And I'm like, well, okay. Like, I still
get it.
I can't call it that. Like, I still think it's not really, I think a more appropriate title is the most resilient movie ever made, because like, my God, it certainly lasted. Should have been destroyed based on like what had happened. But yeah, I get that. And I feel like there's a lot of people who are going to watch Nomadland and be like, this is not for me. You know what I mean? Like, and the same with Promising Young Woman. I think there's going to be a lot of people that watch that too, that are like, yeah, no. But yeah, I think it's pretty good. It's out of the three that we haven't seen, which of those are you kind of looking the most forward to?
Well, the three I haven't seen, I think I'm really looking forward to seeing Minari.
Okay.
Like I don't know if it's the Asian connection in me that I really want to see how that movie does, or how it is. But it's just to me it's intriguing. Like I want to see what that, like, I've heard people talking about it, so I kind of want to see what it's about myself. Judas and the Black Messiah looks good, and The Father, that's a very interesting story. So honestly, things I want to see in all three of them. But right at the moment, the three I haven't seen it's Minari. I want to see what that's about.
I think I feel like I kind of agree with you, because again, I just, in terms of like stories I don't think we've heard or really seen before, like that one seems to be, you know what I mean, like kind of at the forefront for that, because I don't think we've gotten a lot of films about like, you know, Asian people and like, you know, them coming and having to deal with like adjustments or you know, culture shock and things like that. I don't feel like we've gotten as many of those. And like, I guess it's interesting too, because from what I understand of it, the writer director, I believe it was the writer director, like she grew up in like the Midwest, but also but she is Asian and has that background. So like kind of maybe autobiographical in some instances, but I just feel like that, I agree. I feel like that's just a story we haven't seen a lot of. So I think that's the one that has me the most intrigued. But I'm still very excited to watch the other two. I've heard nothing but good things about all three of those movies. So it definitely is going to be interesting to talk after we've watched those three and see where we're at with that. Yeah.
Okay. If you have an opinion on this movie or any of the movies we've talked about today, please reach out to me. I'm on Twitter at Mitchipedia GEM. GEM stands for Geek Elite Media. Richard, where can people find you?
Yeah, so you can actually just head to rycowen.com, RICOWN.com, and that has basically all of my social media links on it. I'm going to be honest, I haven't been very active on social media this year?
Yeah, this new year.
Life's been busy, but
Hey.
it's there. There's a ton of backlog content if you want to go through that.
The rest of Geek Elite Media is at Geek Elite Media on Twitter, at Geek Elite Media on Instagram, and Facebook.com/Geek Elite Media is our Facebook page. Check out archived episodes of this podcast and other podcasts on our website, geekelitemedia.com. If you want to support us on Patreon, it's patreon.com/Geek Elite Media. You can get exclusive material that only our patrons have access to. And whatever podcatcher you use to listen to us, please rate and review us. It helps spread the word of our network. But until next time, this is the Mitch and Rich Show on the Geek Elite Media Network saying always remember to geek out.
This concludes our broadcast.